Thank you. Good afternoon. Welcome to the North Sydney Local Planning Panel. We are here today to determine 7 development applications, and they represent just a small number that the staff don't have delegation to determine. I would like to say that this is the last meeting of the year where we're considering development applications, and the next meeting will be in February for any development applications that fall into the category required to be determined by the panel. This afternoon we have a panel gathered here together. We are all independent, and I'll ask each one to introduce themselves. We have carried out site inspections individually due to the continuing COVID restrictions. However, we're hoping by next year we'll be back to our normal practices. So I could first of all say that just introduce myself briefly, Jan Morell, and I have no conflicts of interest with any matter on the agenda today. Just briefly, my background is I've been the chair of this meeting since its inception, and prior to retirement, I was a full-time commissioner with the Land and Environment Court for 14 years. So I would invite Ian Pickles to introduce himself.
Yes, thank you. My name's Ian Pickles. I've been a town planner for 45 years in both local government and in private practice. Thank you.
Gary?
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Gary Fielding. I'm a town planner with well over 40 years experience as a town planner in the public and private sector. I just like to indicate that I do have a conflict of interest in respect of item 127 Alexander Street, Crow's Nest, and will take no part in the discussion or determination of that item.
Thank you, that is noted. Thank you, Jane.
My name's Jane Van Hagen. I represent the community on the panel. I'm an architect of 30 years practice, now working in project management, and I'm here to represent the community. Thank you.
Thank you. And I will just, by way of beginning, say that the minutes from the last meeting, they were confirmed after that meeting, and we will note that there is a report there which provides for some additional delegations to council officers in respect of minor matters, but the intent of the ministerial direction is still there in terms of any developments that attract more than 10 submissions are referred to this panel for determination. The first matter on the agenda, as indicated, Gary has a conflict, so I'll ask him to step out while we consider this matter. And it is 127 Alexander Street, Crow's Nest. And we have on the line, I just have the submitter. There is nobody who made a submission, but we do have a representative of the applicant, and that is Rocky Zapier. Is that correct? Rocky? Yes, thank you. I can see you on the screen. We'll unmute you, and if you can unmute yourself as well.
Got it. He's got it again.
Yes, I think we can hear you now. Could you?
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If you would like to address the panel.
Well, I'm pretty happy with the planning report that's been submitted to the panel by North Sydney Council. So I'm essentially just here to answer any questions if you have any.
Rightio. Now, you're the applicant, are you the architect as well?
The architect, yeah. Yep.
Thank you. And I do believe that Jane has some questions for you. So if you could bear with us, and we'll ask her to ask those. Thank you.
Rocky, I just wanted to ask about a few different elements. One to do with the fall of the land and the slope on the frontages to east and west and the access to the building. There is an access report, I understand, for main entry on Alexander Street, but having been familiar with that street, you'd see that there's a couple of step ups to get to that entrance that you're proposing, and I don't understand how you're going to be able to ramp up in that.
Well, essentially, we're actually dropping that. The inside of the building, the ground floor, has 2 levels. It has a step up, you're quite correct, to the front door, and then there's a step down into the back part of that story. We're proposing to drop the front floor down to the same level as the back of the building. It's roughly 300 metres, and that'll provide access then through the front door.
Great, fabulous. And then the last second question on access is the rear laneway. Again, it has quite a substantial fall across the site, and I noticed that the driveway will be widened and the cars will access directly into their car space from the street.
Yep.
That's probably going to be quite a difficult feat in terms of the falls and the gradient of the street. Has that been addressed? Is that
It has. We've got scope within the height of the car park area to be able to slope the floor with the slope of the road.
Good, okay.
And we're pretty happy that we can do that without a slope of more than 1 in 20 that we need as a crosswalk.
Okay, and then additional to that is the fact that it's added down at the junction of an L-shaped laneway. Essentially, it's a very narrow.
Yeah, we did.
Risk with safety.
We did have a look at that fairly closely. The traffic engineer was fairly satisfied on the basis that that's not a through laneway. At the end of our property, there's that laneway actually stops and it goes around the corner. And
yeah, well, that's what I'm asking about that in regards.
Yeah. Well, it feels that because of that bend that they've got cars have to make, they're going to slow right down, and we've got convex mirrors that will allow us to have a look and see where those cars are.
That's good. Okay. Last question is about the slab on the roof. By looking at what I can see on the drawings, and they're quite a small when we get to look at them, not an A3 size. I'm just querying about the falls to slab for the roofing area and the level of the height difference you have. You've got a very tight height on the new level that's being added to the top, and it doesn't seem to be a lot of allowance for falls to that slab.
No, there's not a lot of fall. You don't need a lot of falls for a concrete slab. It basically becomes a tanked type arrangement, and like I said, you don't need a lot of falls for that.
So you don't put a lot of drainage, new drainage through.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's what you do. Okay, that's fine.
You minimise the amount of fall that you need by having more drainage.
Okay. As long as you understand. Yeah, that's fine. Good. All right. Those are my questions. That's fine. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Just, we do notice this requires a 4.6 variation to the development standard for the height.
That's right.
And that was submitted with the development application.
Actually, I had a question about
yes,
that.
And I do understand that Jane has a question on that as well. Thank you.
Just in the rear lane at the top level, there's a kink to the back rear elevation at the top level to, I guess, sort of a nod to the fact that it's a new, it's a breach of the height plane. Is it possible to provide a step back there of about a metre and a half to give at least a better indication of?
Well, I mean, anything's possible. But when we did the feasibility, that metre and a half across the back of that, it's not a big site as you can see, and that losing that much floor area did have quite an impact on the viability of the site. I'm not saying that wouldn't be viable, but obviously it's not going to be as viable. And I'm not convinced that a metre and a half is going to make a lot more difference visually than what we're proposing now from a distance anyway. So I'm not sure what we'd achieve by that. I know that it kind of sets it back a little bit more and it makes it seem like it's not quite as tall, but I don't think it's going to achieve a lot visually from what we're proposing.
I'd say it'd be better than what you've provided. I think what
marginally, but then you've got to, then you've got to, is it worth, for that marginal increment in benefit, is it worth the economic cost to it?
Well, it's not an economic decision when you're looking at it from outside the building.
No, of course not.
The owner is definitely
Sure. But we're making economic decisions. Sorry, we're making economic decisions in the office here, and seeing what's been approved and happened within close proximity to that site, I think we've been pretty considered, I think, with what we're doing.
I noticed that the roof is a bit of a mansard effect.
Yeah.
So that's to identify the difference there. Okay. Thank you very much. Nothing further. Ian, do you have any questions?
No.
No. Thank you very much, Mr. Zapier, for making yourself available this afternoon, and we will be making a determination later today, and our decision will be on the website by the end of the week.
Terrific. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Call them.
Yes, thank you. We'll ask Gary Fielding to come in now. Can I trouble you, David, for the plans for item 2, the larger scale? Thank you, Mr. Fielding's joined us. So we'll move on to item number 2, which is 4 to 6 Mackay Street, Waverton. And we don't have any objectors or submitters who wish to address the panel, but we do have the applicant's representatives, and I invite you to address the panel. The panel has all visited the site, and we also have the benefit of the council officer's report, as everybody else does as well. So could I invite the urban planner, Rusbai Lugmani, and I don't think I got that pronunciation very correct, but I'll let you correct me.
No, that was really fine. Good afternoon. My name is Rusbai. I'm presenting the applicant. We are the urban planners, and we have gone through the report. I'm very happy with the outcomes and also the assessment of council. We are here to answer the questions, and my colleague Andrew, who is the architect of the project, is also available if you've got any questions about the design.
Andrew Talbot, thank you. Yes. And can I ask the panel if they have any questions to ask of the applicant's representatives?
We do, for me, no.
No? We do notice that this is a modification of a development consent that has previously come to this panel.
Right.
So a few of us are familiar with the previous application. And I just consider that this application provides for a better build outcome, I do notice it increases the number of units by 1 and also the car parking by 1. I don't have any questions. As I said, I do notice that the design is, well, I would consider to be an improvement over the previous. So I'll just ask the other panel members if they have any questions. Thank you.
No, no more questions of me. It's a definite improvement on last one.
Well done, Andrew.
I just had a couple of questions. One of the submitters who lives in the building to the east is concerned about privacy conditions, but could you just confirm that the plans incorporate privacy screenings to protect the privacy of people living in the units to the east?
Yes, by all means. Andrew, would you like to make a comment on that?
Yes, please.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Yes, so privacy was a fundamental principle of the minor redesign of the building on this east facade. You'll notice that on level 1 plans, level 2 plans and level 3 plans, there are privacy screens which have been designed such that there is no direct overlooking between any of the windows or balconies in number 10 Mackay Street and any of the units in this development on that eastern facade. So it's there are when windows are outside of 12 meters, which is the sort of ADG separation distance, there's considered not need for privacy screens, but where we're within that or whether it's strategically important, we have added those screens, and they're all detailed there on the external materials board and on the plans.
I have one other question. The next door neighbour was also concerned about the garbage storage area adjacent to the front entrance. I can see on the plans that it's screened by a bit of landscaping, but my understanding is that that's only a temporary garbage storage for the once a week garbage collection day.
Yes,
in the basement.
Absolutely correct. So the basement contains all required garbage store, and those bins are transported out for collection on collection day only and immediately returned back to the basement. So they'll only be there for the presentation for collection by the bin trucks.
Thank you.
Thank you. So that's just during the course of one day then?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. 100% correct. Yes.
Yep. Thank you very much. Thank you for asking those questions, because we did receive further submissions from that particular owner of the apartment next door, and that clarifies it. We have no further questions, so we do thank you for making yourselves available to us this afternoon. And as I said previously, our decision's made later today, and then it will be on the website by the end of the week. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now we'll now move to item number 3, which is 425 to 429 Pacific Highway Crow's Nest. And this is before the panel because it is a variation greater than 10%, and it's partial demolition to a heritage item. I don't have any objectors who wish to address the panel this afternoon, but I do have 2 representatives of the applicant, Navin Prasad and Tony Moody. So I don't mind which order you wish to address us in, and there may be some questions from the panel as well. Thank you. Mr. Moody, yes.
Chair and panel members, can you hear me? I hope you can. Thank you. I fully support the recommendation for approval. The current building on top of the heritage item is an aberration. It should never have been approved. I think we all accept that. Through a previous application and this application, I consider that this aberration will be significantly improved in its aesthetic and urban design outcomes for this building. The report by Mr. Donovan explains in detail the benefits, and I should also add the Heritage Officer also supports the proposed development and the positive outcomes. We just have 2 issues with the conditions of consent. And the first one is the issue of dwell time. Condition B1. The proposed dwell time is 10 seconds. Mr. Prasad will explain to you, who's the expert, that 10 seconds is in accordance with the traffic guidelines referred to when Transport New South Wales gave its concurrence. The report requires 60 seconds. We consider 60 seconds is unreasonable for the following reasons. First of all, the report correctly notes a council letter to the applicant dated 22nd of October, in which it makes mention of the fact that 10 seconds is not acceptable, but 25 seconds is acceptable. In other words, council on the 22nd of October advised the applicant that a 25-second dwell time was appropriate, given the unique intersection. Much longer dwell time than would be normally acceptable of 10 seconds. But my client, following the advice of Ms. Prasad and myself, agrees to the 25 seconds. So we ask that condition P1 be replaced from 10 seconds to 25 seconds as per the council letter and as per the transport guidelines. We also agree that there should be no change in the signage during the school zone times. So in other words, we would ask that further restriction, first restriction 25 seconds, and the further restriction that there be no change in the sign during school time zones. The second condition which we ask you to consider is condition G2, a 3-year consent. You would be keenly aware of the provisions of clause 14 of the state Environmental Planning Policy number 64, which essentially says 15 years consent unless, 1, there's a policy in place before the implementation of SEP 64, which set a reduced period, and I understand that that is not the case. Certainly not DCP 2013, which postdates SEP 64 considerably. But the argument put forward for this period from 15 years to a very restrictive 3 years is because the area is undergoing change. Now, there's no question this area is undergoing change, but the major qualification to that point is that the proposed advertisement, quote, must be inconsistent with that change. In other words, you go from 15 years to a lesser figure, provided the area is undergoing change and the proposed advertisement is inconsistent with that change. With respect, the report commends the proposed sign by the Heritage Officer, by Mr. Donovan, and raises no objections in terms of the proposed sign being inconsistent with the future character of the area. In fact, in terms of the vitality of the area, the use of modern technology is entirely appropriate, particularly replacing what is an aberration now. Council's Heritage Officer, for example, advises that the proposed contemporary form of illumination is in keeping with the proposed contemporary form of the approved new works and is consistent with the future aspirations. There are other references of similar nature. We would say, Chairperson and panel members, 3 years is a far too restrictive period. We would ask that instead of perhaps the 15 years under SEP 64, that a 10-year period be granted, which is a more reasonable period given the capital investment, but most importantly because we all, certainly the applicant's consultants, consider this as a most desirable development. It's not inconsistent with the future character and will be an added contribution, positive contribution to the locality. So ultimately, panel members, we ask that the condition regarding dwell time be moved to 25 seconds. Furthermore, no changing messages during the school zones, and that the period of the consent be changed from 3 years to 10 years, because this proposed sign and development itself, but this proposed advertisement is not inconsistent or incompatible with the likely future character of the area. Thank you, Chair and panel members.
Thank you, Mr. Moody. Does the Navin Prasad wish to add anything?
Yes, just to extend on what Tony has just said. With the time period for advertising also, under the advertising guidelines, there is also a condition, a requirement for a post-safety audit to be done 12 to 18 months post-installation as part of any sign installation, which is designed to basically maintain safety for road users at this intersection. So by providing, and that consent, that allows you, or allows RM Transport or to get a road safety audit by an independent person done, and if there's any safety issues raised, it's up to the applicant to rectify those. So in this respect, the safety issue is ongoing and monitored consistently throughout the life cycle. Furthermore, with the dwell time also, I believe the letter that was sent to the applicant on the 22nd of October did allow for a 25-second dwell time rather than 10-second dwell time. The 10-second dwell time is based on the posted speed limit of the area. So this area is a 60-kilometre speed limit, and obviously the school zone beforehand brings it down to 40 kilometres an hour. As part of the guidelines, advertising guidelines, the sign must remain static during those school zone hours, and even basically display a road safety. I have seen a number of sites where they display 40k school zone hours during that morning and afternoon school zone times. So in this respect, I feel that it's a little bit unreasonable for a dwell time to be actually 60 seconds as it was stated in the report. And rather than 10 seconds, we're quite happy to accept a 25-second dwell time, as Tony alluded to earlier. And if there's any other questions that the panel would like to ask regarding the safety of this, I'm quite happy to answer anything.
Chair, can I add one quick point, if you don't mind?
Yes.
Just on the issue of lighting, the lighting report did contemplate future high-density development and found that the lighting from the LED signage would not create adverse impact on future development. which is further consistent with our consideration that this proposed signage and development itself, but the proposed signage is entirely consistent with the likely future character. And that's why we seek a greater period from 3 years to 10 years. Thank you.
So I just have one question of the traffic engineer. When you say there will be a blackout time in terms of the sign being stationary, so that would be from 8 till 9:30 of a morning and 2:30 to 4 o'clock every afternoon.
That's correct. It has to remain static. It's not allowed to flip over and display advertising messages during that period.
Okay.
For the whole sign period.
So, sorry, Madam Chair. So it's to be blacked out at that time or to be not changed?
Static.
You can. What the guidelines state is that you can actually have just one advertising image displayed.
That's what I, yeah.
It can't be flipping over every 10 seconds. Or
No. No, that's fine.
Okay, right. Does anyone else have any questions?
Just a question to Mr. Moody about the 3-year period that's been proposed, and you're proposing 10 years. I think you would understand as a planner that there needs to be some element of caution injected into this particular approval, given the changes that are very likely to occur in this area. And I guess as a member of the panel, I'm just viewing that 3 years as perhaps an initial 3-year period. And then after that, or prior to the expiration of that 3-year period, the applicant could come back with a 4.55 requesting a further extension of that period, when things may be a little clearer as far as the future of that intersection is concerned. Can you, as a planner, understand the caution that we may wish to apply in that regard, and therefore the 3 years?
Panel member, yes, I can. I think the cautionary approach is adopted by the fact that instead of 15 years, a 10-year period is adopted. But if panel members decide to adopt what I consider to be an onerous 3-year period, but if they were to decide that, then yes, I think that's I would have to say, a positive recommendation to advise the applicant to come back with a future application after the 3 years. I suppose it's a very high investment, very high. And if the panel was not sort of a mind to say 10 years, to go somewhere between the 3 and 10-year period and say you can come back, say, after 7 years with a future application. I just think it's overly cautious given the positive comments of all council officers about the sign. There's no critical comments about the sign, and the lighting report said it will not be a problem. So I suppose between the 3 and 15-year period, obviously it's the decision of the panel, but with a qualification, as you correctly noted, about a future application to be lodged before the cessation of that.
Yes.
Thank you.
Can I just make a further comment on that also? I do understand the reasoning behind the 3 years that council had put in its DCP, but when you consider the timing of when the DCP was written back in 2013, these type of digital media signs weren't basically they were in existence, but they weren't professionally used quite in a lot. There was still basically, we had the static billboard types. As obviously technologies move forward, the cost of technology comes down, and more of these signs are now being changed over as technology moves on. So the guidelines were written in 2017, the advertising guidelines. And this is where I think that maybe, not to pass judgment, but I think the DCP may need amendment to take on board the progression of technology. There's a number of reasons why the LED signs are better, even from OHS requirements, and you don't need a person going up there with a ladder and changing a paper poster style billboard every time they want to change a sign. It's quite, you just electronically, you can communicate with the sign, you can monitor the sign, it's got fail-safe operations in it. So I think in that respect, I think the technology has actually moved quicker than our planning laws have actually, and planning regulations have moved. So that's something I'd just like the panel to consider also.
Thank you very much. No further questions. So as for the other item, our decision will be made tonight and then it'll be available on the website by the end of the week. And thank you for making yourselves available this afternoon. Good afternoon.
Thank you.
The next matter that we have on the agenda is item number 4, which is 24 Hodgson Avenue, Cremorne Point. And this is alterations and additions to an existing dwelling and a new first floor rear addition. I do have a number of submitters who would like to address the panel. So can I first of all invite Stephanie Singh. Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for the opportunity to speak. I represent the 9 of 12 units at 22 Hodgson Avenue who will be impacted by this development application for 24 Hodgson Avenue. I appeal for the panel to please delay your decision for this development application until a better design can be negotiated with the 9 households that are impacted in this adjoining building. The Minto Planning Services report submitted as part of this application, which forms the very basis of this application for 24 Hodgson Avenue, has failed in addressing the provisions outlined in the North Sydney Development Control Plan 2013. Firstly, the report submitted by the applicant is disingenuous. It has only taken into consideration the impact of the development on 2 of the 9 units that actually face northeast. How does one consider this DA submission from 24 Hodgson Avenue to have met the North Sydney DCP provision P2 on designed to maximize the sharing of views from surrounding properties if it has completely disregarded 75% of the units impacted by this development? Additionally, provision 4 within the same DCP states where a proposal is likely to adversely affect views from either public or private land, council will give consideration to the Land and Environment Court's planning principles for view sharing. It is acknowledged within the case of Tenacity versus Warringah Council that there are different types of views for assessment, be it water right through to partial views. The submission I have put forward includes a table that clearly outlines the current views of the 9 units, which is majority of the building, and validates that this building, 22 Hodgson Avenue, was built to orientate towards the northeast for the Mossman Bay views. This is our front view, and the application takes very little consideration on these views and therefore does not satisfy this provision within the DCP. Moving to the assessment of the impact of this development on the neighbours, the Minto report is misleading. It is clear that the principles of tenacity view sharing was insufficiently addressed in the original submission as validated by a letter from North Sydney Council to the applicant in September following the submission of the first DA. I'd also like to flag that in the same letter from North Sydney Council to the applicant, there was a request for the applicant to address the roofline compliance with standard, as North Sydney Council would not approve the initial application on that basis. Now, of course, the applicant naturally has proceeded to comply with this by reducing the roofline, which has coincidentally resulted in them seemingly compromising on the view sharing request. We strongly disagree with this statement from the assessment officer. We believe that there has been little consideration on us neighbours, as clearly demonstrated by the impact assessment conducted throughout the submission process. We are also severely disappointed by the fact that there has been no engagement or attempt to engage in conversation to discuss this application with us neighbours. The applicant at 24 Hodgson Avenue already enjoys extensive water and vista views of Mossman Bay. The second story extension, also the second extension to this dwelling since 2012, will enhance their water views and vista views further to impact our only views. I plead with the panel, how is this seen to align with provisions 2 and 4 of section 1.3.6 of the DCP? How does this meet the objective of encouraging view sharing as a means of ensuring equitable access to views from dwellings as per the North Sydney DCP objectives for residential development? In summary, we believe that it is a fair and reasonable request that we're putting forward today and urge for the panel to delay this decision to allow for further consultation in a neighbourly fashion between us, given that this application has not been and still is not in line with the provisions of the North Sydney Development Control Plan. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Stephanie. Can I invite Julia Cranwell? Thank you. If you'd like to address the panel. We'll take you off mute, and are you off mute yourself? Thank you.
Apologies. Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Hi. Thank you so much, panel, for giving me the opportunity to speak today. Obviously, Stephanie has very eloquently put our case in general of the 9 units, and I would just like to pull out some other clauses out of Robin C's report additionally that I refute. But firstly, I also sent you some views. So I am the most impacted unit, being Unit 7, which is why I've been specifically requested to speak. So my unit only has views facing the neighbour northeast. And as you open my front door, as you walk into the unit, you can see the beautiful view down to Mcmahon Bay and the water from the front door the moment that you enter the unit. We have beautiful views of the water, sitting in the lounge room and standing in the lounge room. We have beautiful views on the balcony. We have very good views from the bedroom down to the water on Mcmahon Bay. We also have partial water views from the kitchen standing. In addition to North Sydney's Development Control Plan, and I won't, suck eggs and read that to you again, in the tenacity case law, if you read the actual case law case that was passed, which is the instrument that North Sydney Council rely upon, it is considered that views from the kitchen are very valuable because you spend a lot of time in the kitchen, and views from a living room, sitting and standing, are extremely valued. They are the most valuable under the tenacity case law. So we have all that. We have no other views other than north facing, and as Stephanie said, our building was built to orient this view. So the other thing I was going to speak about is extract from Robin C's report, page 76 to 77. He actually states there that Unit 7, second floor of this building, my unit, proposed the work will obstruct the water views, very true, and some of the district views from the kitchen, living and balcony. However, the view skyline will be retained. The proposal will partially obstruct the water view and nearby vegetation, as seen from the window of the bedroom. It is, however, noted that the balustrades on the northern edge of the proposed bedroom balcony is likely to cause additional obstruction of the remaining water view. This impact, in our view, in my view, is extremely understated. In fact, the placement of my kitchen and my lounge, dining and balcony will mean that I will see nothing other than a grey plaster rendered building. I will have zero view from those areas at all of any vista. I will literally see the building. From the bedroom, I will have a glimpse of a vista, but this whole development completely obliterates my view and it replaces it with a brick building. So I refute that. The second thing in Mr. Robin C's report is that he asserts that our view is a side view. As Stephanie said, this building was built in 1965. And it has been oriented to have that aspect of the northeast views. My unit and 2 others only have windows facing the northeast view, and 6 of the other remaining units have the balconies and views facing this water. We do not have a front door entrance on the road on 22 Hodgson. In fact, our building has a driveway and garages and an entrance that actually butt up against the fence to this view. So one could argue that our building does not rotate to a front door as does a normal house to Hodgson Avenue. We have no way of getting in the building from there, and it has been built so that this is we consider this to be the front of our building, not as per a normal house with a front door on the road and then a side entrance. So we refute that this is a side view. And again, my other main point was that North Sydney Council, as Stephanie said, wrote to the applicant in September as their initial design exceeded the roof limit for North Sydney Council by 1.4 to 1.8 metres. We don't know if that was an ambient claim to put it in to be so far above so that they could then come back and say, hey, guess what? We've raised the roof line. They had to do that to comply. And they took, excuse me using the word audacity, but they had the audacity in that response, and their second version of the Minto report to say that they have now considered the view loss of our 9 units. They didn't. They literally just lowered the roof line and then had never had any consultation with us, no discussion with us, despite the fact they had discussion with other neighbours who are not affected. Being on the corner of the road of Airedale and Hobson as well, Hodgson Avenue, they only impact us. They don't have any other adjoining neighbours that they directly impact, yet they had zero discussion with us. And that is why we plead with you to please look at all the aspects of this application. And we are reasonable people, but we don't believe that a reasonable design has been met. And we would like this decision to be held over so that there is some negotiation of a compromise on this design. That's my main. I've sent you my beautiful water views. One last point I would like to make as well is in the Minto report as well, they have drawn up, there's no plans submitted that show the trajectory of the impact on my unit because they failed to admit that we had any views from the bedroom or any views from the kitchen. Robin C came out, saw the severe impact, told them that there were views from those rooms. They have still never submitted plans that acknowledge, or a Minto report that acknowledges my views from every room in my unit. They fail to acknowledge that. They keep sending it an attachment that shows a picture on realestate.com from when I purchased it of an ambience photo from the balcony with a pot plant. So we don't believe that it genuinely addresses the impact. And I would ask you to look at the pictures that I've sent you of my wonderful views and the impact this is having on the other 8 units and reconsider, hold over for a reconsideration of design. That's all. I really thank you for your time today.
Thank you very much. And I'd like to confirm that we did receive your further submission with the photograph as well.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. And Shirley Kirkwood, please.
Thank you very much, Ms Morell, and good afternoon, panel. Thank you, Stephanie and Julia. Everything they say, I'm sort of going to repeat, but in a much more personal tone. I've been a resident here for 26 years, and I'm an owner of 2 of the 1-bedroom units here in this building. I'd like to add the following facts. The applicant's property already has the lion's shares of views and access to amenities over 2 levels on 4 sides. These have been accumulated over extensive developments over the past years and to our property's detriment already. In the context of my home, Unit 3, this latest application now proposes to steal the only views that I have from the only 4 windows that I have, as Julia was explaining, as per her Unit 7 and also for Unit 11, which we all face the east across Mossman Bay and the Ridgeline, and it's to be replaced with the proposed imposing dark grey structure. Let me just step away. That is my current view. I have sent you, these views to me provides sense of place, light and spaciousness in my main living area and through my humble 1-bedroom apartment. As Julia explained, and I put in my written submission, which I've sent to panel, as Julia explained, our front door opens straight in and looks straight out at the view. This view is extremely valuable in more ways than one to my modest needs and the reason I purchased the property, as I'm sure it is for Unit 7, 11 and all the other apartments. The accumulation of the existing views and amenities by the applicant that the applicant already has surely has to be taken into context when it comes to tenacity and view sharings. When is enough on one property when it comes to accumulation of views and amenities at the expense of many others? This is, we do not believe, fair sharing. The report states that, just on another note, the report states that noise disruption is likely to be an issue. I dispute this as we have already experienced increased noise disturbance since the previous developments have been built, which has created like a funnel, and noise resonates up through their building and property into our building. Air conditioning, pool filters, leaf blowers, loud music, general discussions, disputes, upsets can all be clearly heard. I can even hear the applicant's conversation when he's in his room, which is the only window facing us when it is open. And the other day, the guys were there erecting all the posts. I could hear him talking to the guys from the roof. This noise disruption will increase with the closeness of proposed outer walls and the addition of the 4 new windows. I also dispute that visual privacy into my unit on the first floor will not be an issue. When I sit in bed reading in the morning, like I did this morning, I can see straight into that window now that they have when they open their shutters. The 2 new proposed bedroom windows will be even closer to our property and will look directly into my bedroom, should they want to. And while they've got numerous alternative to rooms to live their daily life, I am limited to 4 rooms. The proposed dark grey, dominating, imposing walls, together with a loss of view, loss of visual privacy and increased noise, will make me feel like I'm living in a maximum security prison through no fault of my own. Overall, in my opinion and the others, this DA is not submissive as stated in council report. It is avaricious and imposing at the expense of 9 neighbouring homes, the residents and owners. I'd also like to just refer again to that Minto report. Not only did it disregard Julia's units with views, it disregarded all of ours. And I, like Julia, have that full front east-facing views with only 4 windows. So I implore the panel to reassess council's recommendation and invite all of you to further inspect and to really ascertain the negative impacts. So thank you all for your time.
Thank you, Ms Kirkwood. If you'd like to all stay on and listen to Andrew Minto on behalf of the applicant and Philip Corbin, the architect. And is Philip Corbin here?
Mr Corbin is there. He's just on mute.
Madam Chair, Phil Corbin here. Can you hear me?
Yes, could you put your video on if possible, please?
Of course. One moment, please.
I know he is. He's meeting room 2.
Meeting room 2.
Oh, he's in meeting room 2.
Oh, sorry, yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah. Right, very well. Now, you heard what the residents of the adjoining residential flat building had to say as well. So I'd like you to bear that in mind in addressing the panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Philip Corbin here. I'm actually with Richard Garside, who is our client here this afternoon. I think the best course of action here is I'm just going to briefly outline a bit of history and what has been undertaken to date, and then Mr Minto will specifically address the view sharing issues. If I could just start by first of all just saying that this particular DA basically amounts to the addition of a bedroom and road at the rear of the existing house over an existing single-storey portion of the building. The addition itself is basically located in this location for simply the purpose that there is no other alternative to where it could be located. The proposal as it stands now is basically in accordance with all of the planning controls. We have a row of ticks in that respect. When we first lodged the application, the work did include an attic room in the roof and a pitched roof over the rear addition. That work, when we submitted the application, it was that part of the building within the attic space that effectively tipped us into being over the height control. When council asked us to review the application, we asked if we could be provided with photographs from the adjacent property, and Mr C advised us that the applicant, that the owners of those properties had denied us access to those. So we had relied upon the information that was provided in the realestate.com imagery when the property number 7 was sold. When we provided that information, it became clear that was in fact some water view over the back of this property, but there was also substantial views to the northeast, and these were district views. On the basis of that, and when Mr. C had asked us to basically review that application, we realised that number 11, which was the topmost unit, if we were to delete that pitched roof and put a flat roof over it, we would actually open up the view from that particular apartment. We looked at numerous alternatives and how we could make some adjustment to the addition that might actually assist the apartment number 7. We were again still relying on information we could provide off the net. And in the end, we went through several alternatives and discussed these with Mr. C. Unfortunately, none of those seem to be able to an appropriate response in terms of still providing the requirement of providing that additional bedroom, robe and ensuite. And hence we resubmitted on that basis. To our mind, we think we've actually done a good job in trying to establish what was the most appropriate solution to this situation. I reiterate that we are compliant with all of those controls. I might just also add that I think the objectors in the apartments next door have stated that there's 12 there and that they're all affected. With the greatest respect to all, and we're struggling to understand how that could be the case, because from what we can establish, there are only 2 that actually we're affecting any view. It might be also noted that the apartment block is some 6 metres off the side boundary. That's a pretty substantial setback. I'd also just note that in page 9 of Mr. C's report, there's a 1954 photograph which clearly shows that the apartment building was built on a site that once had what would have been a Federation style house consistent with the house at number 24 Hodgson. So we have a situation where we've got a non-compliant use of a 3-storey, 12 apartment building here, which has been pushed back on this site here, but it's not the actual stand. The original house and the original design of this property would have been a house that faced the street. So we think it is actually, as Mr. C has pointed out, it's fair and reasonable to suggest that the front boundary or the front street front is the front property of number 22, and that the 2 east and western boundaries are in fact the side boundaries. I'll leave it at that and hand it over to Andrew to comment on the views further. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Phil. Madam Chair, panel members, I think Mr. Corbyn's dealt with most of the view loss matters. However, I'm sure and I know that you're all well aware of the tenacity view loss principles. You'll note from the issue of view loss has been dealt with in significant detail in both the submissions of the applicant and the council officer's report. It's my opinion that the proposal satisfies those principles. Whilst it is acknowledged that the proposal will result in some view loss, and that is always unfortunate, it is submitted in the circumstances of this case that the view loss proposed is acceptable and is consistent with that anticipated by the tenacity view loss principles. The proposal, in our opinion, or the circumstances of this case, in our opinion, are such that the views are achieved across a side boundary. The proposal does adopt a skillful design. The addition complies with all applicable council controls and is located within what would reasonably expect it to be the building zone for the subject site. It's our position that all reasonable efforts have been made to minimise view loss. In response to some of the issues that were raised, we are of the opinion that Units 7 and 11, which have been the focus of this assessment, are the key units which are subject to potential view loss from this proposal, and that they have been properly assessed. I think that there is a difference between a potential loss of outlook and issues related to view loss. And I think that distinction needs to be made. I think that it needs to be recognised that, as Mr. Corbyn stated, in addition to views towards and over Mossman Bay, that the subject units adjoining the site do have extensive district views in a northeasterly direction. There was also comments raised by adjoining property owners that that a compromise should be considered. We have examined and considered all of the alternate proposals, and we provided those options to council. The only viable addition that can be provided to this dwelling is as currently proposed. Anything less that would I guess, maintain some level of view would not be a viable addition that would result in a room that doesn't have sufficient width or the like. I'd also need to point out, as Mr. Corbin stated, that we did request to have access to the photos that council had taken from Unit 7, and that access was denied. You know, we would have, and if we had access to those photos, then we certainly could have done montages from those. But notwithstanding, I don't believe that that changes the situation in relation to this matter. So for those reasons, I would ask that you do adopt the recommendation of the council staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Minto. The panel may have some questions. Can I ask the panel if they have any questions? Yes, thank you, Mr. Pickles. Yes.
Yeah, I have some questions to the residents and owners of number 22 Watson Avenue. In particular, perhaps Julia Cranwell. I read the report and I've read the submissions, and I'm familiar with the tenacity rules, and I just wanted to ask Julia, perhaps, can you see that it could be an unrealistic expectation that the applicants can expect that they can protect the views of all units in a multi-unit building that faces east from the side of the building, when the application itself before us is compliant with the height control and compliant with the development control plan. So my question is, is it an unrealistic expectation that you have?
Well, no, I don't think it's unrealistic. And one of the owners, actually the owner of Unit 7, had a professional architect who has attended a lot of these matters before, actually submit his professional opinion on the first iteration of the Minto report. And he actually pointed out in that submission to North Sydney Council, I mean, I'm not an architect, I'm not an expert, that they have quite a portion of land on the far side of the building, around the side of the building. They've got quite a portion of land there, which would allow them to do, I think it was almost equivalent of this design on the side of the property that faces the water, without impacting us at all. So he actually mentioned that in his submission about opportunities to develop this property. It isn't overdeveloped to the capacity. They do have quite a bit of garden still, and on the far side of the house, as I said, that would not impact any neighbours, because as I said, they're on a corner block. So on the far side of the house, the side that doesn't butt up against us, they have ample opportunity to do some redesign there. So I can totally refute Mr. Corbyn's and Mr. Minto's assertion that there is no other opportunity for a possible redesign. And to me, they had no discussion with us. And I would like to also make a point about the photos. Mr. C came out. I actually even said to Mr. C when he visited my property again, if Mr. Garside would like to come in and see my views, because they were quite contemptuous in their attitude to me. And actually, Mr. Garside wrote to the Mayor and he CC'd me into a personal correspondence and basically intimated that my photos were actually fake, that these photos were not taken from my unit. They failed to recognise in any of their submissions that I actually had these views. And I challenge you to find in the Minto report, even in the redesign, acknowledgement of my views from the kitchen, acknowledgement from my views from the bedroom, or acknowledgement of any view whatsoever, other than a pot plant on my balcony. I do believe there is opportunity for redesign. We also talked about some opportunity to set this extension back to 3.9 metres instead of 5 metres. Mr. C made a decision on his own that he didn't think that would gain us any advantage. Of course it would. Any reduction in this extension would retain my very minimal view. that it is now. And we feel really, really disappointed that there has been absolutely no attempts of the applicant, and I'm not blaming you know, the representatives here today, but I believe the applicant is here today listening as well. He made no attempt to actually have any discussion with us, who are the 9 people impacted, rather than just all the neighbours opposite who weren't impacted, to get them on side. And I refute also, earlier actually, I think Mr. Corbyn said, or Mr. Minto said, only 2 of the units, we said, we are trying to say 12 of the units are affected. We've never said that. In all our submissions, and the 3 of us speaking today, we said 9 of the units have some orientation to the northeast side, not 12. 3 of the units are not represented because they face the other side. And in 1954, I think it's a long bow to go back to 1954 when there's a picture of a dwelling there in 1954. Let's go back to this house in 1954. It didn't have all these multiple extensions on it, and we wouldn't be in the position we're in now. We've been there since 1965 and we've enjoyed this view since then. I do believe there is a possibility of a redesign, and Mr. Corbyn is a very successful architect and he designs a lot of properties in the area, and I believe there's ample opportunity for some negotiation of a redesign.
Thank you.
Mr. Minto, do you wish to respond to what you heard?
Madam Chair, Madam Chair, can I just respond? Just in terms of the alternate suggestion about an addition on the southeast side of the dwelling, obviously there are a number of other considerations which would then come into play. We are located in a heritage conservation area. It would breach front building setbacks and the like. It's not as simple as just saying we can put it on that side of the building.
Okay, and just another question. It's with respect to, is there the necessity for it to extend so far back? It's about some 5 metres. Could it not be reduced by, say, a metre?
Could I respond to that, Madam Chair?
Yes, you may.
Yeah, Philip Corbyn here again. Look, we actually went through this exercise with this to see what difference it would make if the depth of that bedroom was cut back. And we were able to establish from the photographic information that we had that in fact cutting it back with a metre would not actually open up a water view for number 7. And unfortunately, because of that fact, and because of the fact that basically that wall is located below the wall below, it makes a logical construction sense that that wall should stay in that location. Thank you.
So therefore, Unit 7 would not enjoy any view sharing at all.
Correct.
As a result of this development.
I don't think that's quite correct, because we need to consider that the view cone or corridor, if you like, for those units is quite extensive. It extends, you know, in a large arc that does take in Mossman Bay, but also extends through to the north and picks up significant district views. Those views are unaffected by the proposal.
Can I just ask a question? In regards to the attitude of not doing something because it's more convenient to throw it over the existing structure is not good enough in my view. I do think a metre cut back on the width of that bedroom, and I would suggest a recess on the walk-in road would make a difference to their view of angle. And even if it can't guarantee water views, it's the attitude of having some thought to the neighbours and giving them at least something, as opposed to taking what I consider an extravagant bedroom and a more extravagant wardrobe. I do think the building, that extension can be reduced by a metre in both directions, away from the units, from the 1 metre extra from the units, and you can reduce it a metre in width so that it's not 5 but 4 metres. And anything I think that you could do would be a benefit to the neighbours.
Yeah, it would be. Yeah.
And it may be, you know, we have to discuss, and the panel needs to come to some agreement. But things that could be considered are a change to the roof lines, in particular over the walk-in wardrobe portion. That would not impact on the amenity in that area either. But
Madam Chair, I'm just not sure what benefit would be achieved by that change, given that we have provided a flat roof over the addition now.
But I'm just thinking about where the leading edge is in terms of that impact. And I'm not saying that one can expect to retain views that have clearly been enjoyed whilst for many years, but given the fact that one has a compliant development, one needs to also realise that you will not be able to retain the views as they are today, especially across a side boundary, and that's very clear. Yeah.
Sorry,
Stuart. Sorry, Corbin, are you able to comment just in terms of responding to the panel's comments about whether or not there is an ability to reduce the width, noting that it won't provide a meaningful benefit, but can there be a reduction in the width of the addition?
Mr. Minto, Madam Chair, I could just suggest the critical point in trying to achieve some further view to the east, particularly from Unit 7, is the northeast corner of the bedroom. It's not the sort of northwest corner where the road is. So I can't see any advantage in making any adjustment on that western side and how it would actually benefit the neighbours, particularly, as I said, given they are the apartments are some 6 or 7 metres off the boundary and about 8 metres from the addition that's proposed. As I said, we went through an exercise of seeing if we cut that back, and what we established was that if you're going to keep any portion of water view, the actual bedroom would end up being about 1.5 metres wide. I repeat that, 1.5 metres. So I'm sorry, but I just can't see the material benefit in actually cutting that room back, because I don't think it's going to actually provide that water view that's been anticipated.
We can acknowledge a water view is actually not we've actually discussed this ourselves, that the water view is a bit like a pocket water view as opposed to a broad water view, and it is very difficult to maintain that. Yes. We've also discussed the fact that in terms of the area, it's a low density residential area, and the unit block is an anomaly within that. Yes. And the fact that, yes, your residents all face the east, which is also an anomaly in the area. So we're dealing with a very difficult situation here. I don't necessarily think the water view itself, this is a personal opinion, is retainable in any real sense. But I do think that there's a certain amount of generosity required in providing the neighbours who do have only their outlook to the east to rely on for one-bedroom apartments. They must be able to be given as much as possible of outlook over the distance, if you like, if you want to put it that way, over sky, over green space. And I don't think the benefit has been offered. I would still say that bedroom is extravagant, the walk-in robe is even more extravagant, and you can do better.
Anyway, can I just say that this is something the panel will make a decision, deliberations. There are 4 people on the panel, and so we will all be discussing it later today and come to a determination, and our decision will be on the website by the end of the week. And I do thank you all for your participation in this afternoon's meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Well, that takes us to the next item on the agenda, which is item number 5. And this is in respect of a dwelling house at 75 Bank Street, North Sydney. And I do have listed no people that made an objection or submissions. In fact, I don't believe there were any. It is in respect of just the applicant. We have the architect and owner. So Antonio Caminiti and Rebecca Charles, if you're online.
Thank you. Yes, we are. Antonio's on audio and I'm on video and audio, so hopefully you can see me. You possibly will be pleased to hear that we don't have any view issues in this particular property, so you can rest assured we won't be talking about water views. Initially, I just wanted to, Madam Chair and fellow chair members, thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to present to you. We are seeking an amendment to what has been proposed to you, and hopefully you have now in front of you, our submission that came through on Monday at before 5 o'clock. This property at 75 Bank Street is a 1960s property, and my architect will go through in detail how we are addressing the concerns raised by council. I might just add that we made the submission in August of this year and were provided with no feedback through the planning process until we started contacting council in September, and then we're not provided with any feedback from council until we received the report, which went to you last Thursday at 4 p.m. So over the course of the last 4 days, my architect, who cancelled his leave, our heritage planner and I spent the entire weekend redesigning a house that's taken us 6 months to design, and we have submitted revised drawings to you, which you hopefully now have in front of you. So we have also addressed each of the points which were raised as non-compliant, and my architect will go through that. We've also attached a further heritage report to comment on the revised planning that we have put forward, and we also note various omissions that were included the original report that was provided to you, which my architect will go into. I know this is no concern of yours, but I'm a single mother. This property is really important to me. I have 3 children which I wish to house, and I really wish this applicant to go through, please. Antonio, can I hand to you?
Thank you, and I'll hear from your architect, Antonio. I have to say at this point, we have not looked at the plans that were submitted on Monday because they, well, when I say haven't looked at them, they have not been assessed as such. So we'll discuss that later as to what the appropriate path would be. So, Mr. Antonio.
Yep. Good afternoon, panel. Thanks for allowing this opportunity to discuss the application. More particularly, I will go through the amendments that we have submitted. It's something that we would have liked to have had an opportunity to do with the assessment officer.
No.
I have them electronically if you want them, and I can bring them up as a screen share if you want. But yeah, I have to caution you haven't been assessed.
Yes. Can I just say that, you know, I would rather you address what the report contained, Mr. Antonio. The plans that you've submitted, we cannot here today grant any approval to, because they would have to go through the assessment process. But there are ways and means of doing that by what we call, your work over the weekend has not been wasted. You can ask for a section 8.2 review, and that allows for you to put in an amended set of plans and for those to then be reported back to the panel. And so I would say that your work has not been wasted, but we just are not in the position today to accept those plans. So is there anything that you wish to say, Antonio, with respect to the report on the assessment?
Yes. We were probably disappointed that we weren't given an opportunity to discuss the application with council, and particularly given the non-compliances which can easily be addressed, and we have done that with the amended revisions that we've submitted. And the reason we did those revisions, we thought it's far better to show the revision diagrammatically rather than speak about them. But we've gone through and we've addressed the height issue. Notably, the report does contain some errors, particularly in relation to the height exceedance. It's not 1.2 metres, but 1 metre and 20. However, we've now, and this is going to be subject to the review, we've reduced that exceedance to 735 millimetres. We've also reduced the scale and bulk of the proposal. We've recessed the first floor addition by a further 3.6 metres, which now it's now 7.8 metres from the street frontage. The garage has been modified to provide a 1 metre setback, which meant that we need to do additional demolition work internally in order to fit the car under the Australian standards. The other aspects, like the site coverage, we've now addressed. So the revision that we've submitted goes a long way towards rectifying the non-compliances, and notably they do actually respond to the 2 submissions received by neighbours, and one of those would have referred to the material, so we've altered the material as well. So I think in the main it's generally a compliant application now. The issue with the height exceedance is that due to a storage area under the house being excavated many years ago, the non-compliance there measures for about 1 metre and it's 735 millimetres in height, which is the exceedance. But there is a concern though. We don't even know if the Heritage Council's heritage planner has even considered the heritage impact statement that was submitted, nor has the panel received the height modelling that was submitted as part of the application. And I went back and checked the planning portal just to ensure that I did upload those documents, and they were uploaded. I just feel that we weren't given an opportunity to at least address these issues with council staff, and we could have at least, or there could have been some acknowledgement to what we were proposing. But I was advised verbally that it had to go to the panel, and we had no means of addressing any of the concerns prior to it going to the panel. The other issue there was where I offered to lower the height exceedance, because my understanding is it has only gone to the panel due to the height exceedance, because it was initially beyond 10%. We could have lowered that, but yeah, we weren't afforded that opportunity at all, unfortunately.
Right, well, I suppose the difficulty is the panel would also require a new clause 4.6 written request to vary the height limit. And I hear what you say, perhaps it's more a technical matter, but nonetheless that is required. And we wouldn't have any power to approve the amended plans, even if in fact it had been through an assessment. At this point in time...
Madam Chair, sorry, can I just interrupt? We have acted completely within accordance to the advice that we were given both by the planner and by the administrator of this planner. If they've failed to give us the correct guidance, I don't see that process is fair and due. We were asked to resubmit. We were asked to opine on each of the non-compliant aspects. We have done exactly what was asked of us. It is extremely disappointing now on the 2nd of December, when this meeting will not be held again until February, that we are being told that we have to go through another process. I don't in any way challenge that it has to happen, but it is extremely unfair for the next 2 to 3 months that we sit and do nothing when we intended to commence the build work in this property early in the new year.
Well, I can actually say to you that the panel is now appointed for the month, which means that we can look at matters electronically. And if amended plans are submitted to the council, there is no reason as to why it could not be electronically dealt with. Other than if council decides that it requires further notification, and that would be a matter for the council, not this panel. So I just say that I am cognisant of time, and that would be also one course of action that may be available to us. So
we are more than happy, Madam Chair, we're more than happy to go down that process. We are very comfortable to work with this panel. I'll genuinely raise out my architects and my serious concerns with the planning process that has occurred to date, and a concern that you weren't provided with a full report, which would have allowed you to undertake a further review. So I would urge it if we could come directly through you as a group, if possible.
No. The process is that it has to be assessed by a council officer, and a further addendum or a further report would have to be submitted to this same panel as constituted here today, and that would be the only mechanism. It is not a matter of appealing to this panel directly. It is in fact one where I'm just providing that as an alternative option given the circumstances. So you can bear in mind that we'll have regard to everything that's been said today. We will be making a determination, and our decision will be available on the website by the end of the week. But you can be assured we have heard your concerns as to what we can do. I cannot promise anything, and it would be remiss of me to do so. But nonetheless, we have heard your concerns, and there will be a path forward. Thank you very much for your attendance today.
Thank you. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Very well. That now takes us to the next matter on the agenda, which is item number 6, 31 King Street, Waverton, and alterations and additions to an existing single-storey house, 2-storey rear addition and landscaping works. I have before us today just the applicant, not just, but the applicant and his heritage consultant. We have no submitters who would like to address the panel. So Miriam Green and Zoltan Kovacs, the heritage consultant, would you like to address the panel?
Hello, can you hear me?
I can, we can.
Hi, it's Miriam Green. I'm actually the architect for, on behalf of the applicant, Soaring.
Thank you. Yes.
Both myself and the heritage consultant are here just to answer any questions. We appreciate and thank you all for your time and consideration of the proposal. We are satisfied with the conditions of consent that's been put forward to you as the panel. We've gone through a design revision process with the assigned planner, and we are more than satisfied with where the proposal's got to. So we're just here to answer any questions you might have.
Very well. We do notice that one thing we noticed, there perhaps is a little bit of duplication in some of the conditions, in particular colours, finishes and materials. We may need to rationalise C13, 14 and 16, and it would also then be to the approval of the Manager of Development Services, as opposed to leaving that to the PCO. You would have no objection to that course of action?
No,
no, we don't have any issues.
Yes, thank you very much. Any other questions?
No.
Thank you very much, and thank you for attending this afternoon.
Thank you. Much for your time.
Yeah, bye-bye.
That now takes us to the last matter on our agenda for today, which is item number 7, and it is 23 Victoria Street, Mcmahon's Point. And there are elements of this application which breach the height limit by more than 10%. It is a change of use from a commercial building to a single residential dwelling. As I said previously, the panel has inspected this site individually, and we have Felicity King, the applicant, if you would like to address the panel or comment on any of the conditions that are contained within the report.
Good afternoon to the panel, and I can say that similar to the last application, we are happy with the planning report that's been provided and the conditions of consent. And here, if there are any questions that the panel has regarding the application.
Thank you very much, Felicity. Just inquire of the panel members. I think there are a couple of questions with respect to windows on the boundary. Thank you.
Just we note that there's 2 bedrooms at least that require windows on the boundary to the park next door. The windows are actually in a wall on the boundary, which doesn't comply with the BCA, sorry, the National Construction Code. Is that being considered?
It has been considered, but we can, if there are conditions that can be added to the consent that we can meet in regards to the NCC, we would be open to that, or are there any?
Something you need to address with your certifier, your PCA. It's not,
Yes.
it's not a council condition
We can-
requirement, but you do need to think about it, because if we
Yes.
give your consent to this development, then you'll have 2 bedrooms that rely on those windows, which if you can't get natural ventilation and light to those bedrooms, then you won't be able to build those bedrooms. So that's something you need to address with your design team.
Okay.
But it should be considered as an important aspect of what you're doing.
We have, yeah.
As part of the issue with this development is it's built to the boundaries. The rear courtyard's another concern. I note that the ground floor level, that small narrow slot rear courtyard has been partly infilled with a bathroom. I know it didn't go down to ground floor in the original building, but I would think that that would be a beneficial aspect to that building for ventilation and light, and yet there's a bathroom being placed there. So I would think that's not a great design outcome. For
Sure, we can look at that also with the, as you mentioned, we have taken that opening down to the ground level where it doesn't currently exist, to bring ventilation and light down to that addition, that room. But possibly we could look at the bathroom too.
Shift it in a bit.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that every bedroom has an ensuite, so perhaps that's something that could be
Considered.
adjusted. You know?
Yeah.
And that may require a section 4.5
Yes.
application to modify.
Yes.
That was really the only comment I had. I think otherwise it's fine.
Yeah.
I think it's a suitable solution for that building.
Very well.
Thank you very much.
Then. Thank you. There are conditions of consent, and the matters that have been raised by Jane are ones that have to be worked through in terms of these conditions. Yes. So at least we've brought it to your awareness. So that's the purpose. Thank you very much. We have no further questions, and thank you for attending and being patient to the end.
No problem.
We will be making a decision this afternoon, and it will be on the website by the end of the week.
Okay,
Thank
fantastic.
you very much, and I
Thank you.
now formally close the North Sydney Local Planning Panel for the year. Thank you.